I was picking through a dumpster behind a Wendy's when the postal worker found me. The smell of old grease and rotting lettuce filled my nose as I reached for what looked like a half-decent burger someone had tossed. 49 years old, wearing a coat I'd pulled off a donations rack 3 winters ago, searching for my lunch and other people's garbage. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Excuse me, sir, are you Dennis Holbrook?" I turned around slowly. A young postal worker, maybe 25, stood there in his crisp USPS uniform, holding an envelope like it might explode. His name tag said Jerome. Kid looked nervous. Probably his first time delivering mail to someone knee-deep in a dumpster. "Who's asking?" I kept my hand on the burger wrapper, not about to let a decent meal go just because someone knew my name. "I've been looking for you for 3 days. The shelter said you might be here. This is certified mail, sir. I need you to sign for it." Nobody with good news ever sends certified mail to homeless people. Last time I got certified mail, it was an eviction notice. Time before that, divorce papers. But something in Jerome's face made me climb out of that dumpster. Maybe it was the way he called me sir, without a trace of mockery. I wiped my hands on my jeans and took his electronic pad, signed my name with a finger that shook from hunger, not nerves. The envelope was thick, expensive paper with a law firm's name embossed in the corner. Brennan, Malone and Associates. "You might want to sit down before you open that," Jerome said quietly. "Son, I live under a bridge." Sitting down is pretty much all I do. But I opened it anyway, right there in the alley, with the September sun beating down and the smell of garbage juice on my shoes. Inside was a letter with just 3 lines that made my legs give out. I did sit down then, right on the curb, holding paper that felt more valuable than gold. Trust distribution notice, Harold Cross Estate. Beneficiary, Dennis Mitchell Holbrook. Current trust value, $340,000. Harold Cross was my grandfather. He died in 1992 when I was 8 years old, and my father Mitchell had spent the last 41 years telling anyone who'd listen that the old man left us nothing. Gave it all to tree huggers and charity cases, my father would say, usually after his 4th whiskey. Not a penny for his own blood. Jerome was still standing there, watching me read those numbers again and again, like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. "You okay, Mr. Holbrook?" I looked up at this kid, this messenger who'd just delivered either salvation or the cruelest joke anyone had ever played on a desperate man. "My grandfather's been dead for 41 years, I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow. "My father said he left us nothing." Jerome shifted his weight, looked down the alley like he was checking for witnesses. "My grandmother always said the dead have ways of settling old scores. Maybe your grandfather just took his time." The letter included a phone number and an address in downtown Portland. Brennan, Malone and Associates, 42nd floor of the Bancorp Tower. I'd cleaned those offices once, back when I could still hold a job. Back when I had a spine that wasn't held together with steel rods and false promises from workers' comp lawyers. $340 million. I'd been eating from dumpsters for 2 years while $340 million sat in a bank somewhere with my name on it. The absurdity of it made me laugh. A harsh sound that echoed off the alley walls and scared a couple of pigeons fighting over French fries. "Mr. Holbrook?" Jerome looked concerned now, probably wondering if he'd just driven a homeless man completely insane. "I'm fine," I told him, folding the letter carefully and putting it in the inside pocket of my coat, the one that still had a working zipper. "Just trying to figure out how a man goes from dumpster diving to inheriting millions in the span of 30 seconds. "Life's funny that way," Jerome said. He pulled out his phone, did something with the screen. "Listen, I just called you an Uber. On me. That address, Bancorp Tower, you should go there now. Today, don't wait." "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged, already walking back to his mail truck. "My mom was homeless for 3 years before she got back on her feet. Someone helped her when it mattered. Now I'm helping you. Besides, something tells me this is one of those moments where everything changes, and I got to be part of it. That's worth the price of an Uber. 20 minutes later, I walked into the lobby of Bancorp Tower looking like exactly what I was. A homeless man in dirty clothes carrying the smell of dumpster and desperation. The security guard moved to intercept me, but I held up the letter with the law firm's letterhead. He read it, looked at me, read it again, then personally escorted me to the express elevator. 42nd floor, he said, his entire demeanor changed. Ask for Jennifer Brennan. She's expecting you. As the elevator rose, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. Hollow cheeks, gray beard that needed trimming 6 months ago, eyes that had seen too much disappointment to fully believe in hope. But underneath all that, I saw something else. I saw my grandfather Harold's jaw, his stubborn chin, his deep-set eyes. Maybe Jerome's grandmother was right. Maybe the dead did settle old scores. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 42nd floor, and the doors opened onto a reception area that cost more to decorate than I'd made in my best year. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly styled silver hair, looked up and smiled like she'd been waiting for me all day. Mr. Holbrook, Miss Brennan is ready for you. Right this way. I followed her down a hallway lined with original oil paintings, my dumpster diving shoes leaving faint, marks on carpet that probably cost more per square foot than most people's rent. None of it felt real, but the letter in my pocket was solid, tangible, proof that sometimes life saves its biggest surprises for when you're at your lowest. My name is Dennis Holbrook. 3 hours ago I was homeless, forgotten, invisible. Now I was about to find out why my grandfather, Harold Cross, a man who'd been dead for 4 decades, had just reached out from the grave to either save me or destroy what was left of my father's carefully constructed lies. Either way, I was about to learn why Harold Cross had hidden $340 million from his own son, why he'd waited until I was broken and desperate to reveal it, and what my father Mitchell had done that was so unforgivable that a grandfather would play a 40-year waiting game from beyond the grave. The receptionist opened a heavy oak door. Miss Brennan, Mr. Holbrook is here. I walked into that office carrying the smell of garbage and the weight of questions. I was about to walk out with answers that would prove sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served 4 decades later with compound interest. The law office was everything my life wasn't anymore. Clean, organized, purposeful. Jennifer Brennan stood up from behind her mahogany desk, and I could see her fighting not to react to how I smelled. 3 days without a shower leaves a mark, no matter how expensive your lawyer is. Mr. Holbrook, please sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Coffee would be good, I said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than my old truck. Black. Haven't had real coffee in about 6 months. She pressed a button on her desk, ordered 2 coffees, then sat across from me with a thick folder. While we waited, she studied me with the kind of eyes that had seen every human story walk through these doors. Before we discuss the trust, I need to understand your current situation. Our investigators had significant difficulty locating you. I almost laughed. That's a polite way of saying I'm homeless. How long? 2 years, 3 months, and about 12 days, but who's counting? The coffee arrived in china cups with gold trim. The first sip burned my tongue, but it was the good kind of burn, the kind that reminds you civilization still exists. I let the warmth spread through my chest while I decided how much to tell this woman who held my grandfather's secrets. 3 years ago, I was a warehouse supervisor at Beckman Shipping. I started, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Decent job, decent pay, decent life. Then a forklift driver named Eddie Torino decided to text his girlfriend while carrying a load of steel beams. Drove straight into the support beam I was checking. Crushed 3 vertebrae in my lower back. Jennifer wrote something in her legal pad. Workers' compensation? That's the funny part. My supervisor, Greg Paulson, never filed the safety reports for that quarter. When I tried to claim workers' comp, Beckman's lawyers said I was working in an unauthorized area, that I'd violated safety protocols. Eddie mysteriously couldn't remember the accident clearly, and Greg swore I'd been warned about being in that section. They set you up. Greg got a promotion 2 months after I was fired. Eddie got a raise. I got a spine held together with titanium rods and a morphine addiction I had to kick on my own because I couldn't afford rehab. The coffee cup rattled slightly as I set it down. Jennifer noticed, but didn't comment. I lost my apartment 6 months later. Lived in my truck for a while, but the payments caught up. Been on the street since. Riverside Bridge in the summer. The underground steam tunnels in winter when security doesn't run us off. What about family? Your father? That made me laugh, a bitter sound that didn't belong in this pristine office. Mitchell Holbrook doesn't acknowledge homeless sons. He visited once, about a year ago. Stood 10 feet away like poverty was contagious. Told me I'd brought it on myself, just like my mother brought her death on herself. Your mother? Ruth Holbrook, formerly Ruth Canton, died when I was 15. Officially, it was an accidental overdose, sleeping pills and vodka. Unofficially, my father had been telling everyone for years that she was unstable, depressed, a burden. He remarried 6 months later to a woman named Gloria, who'd been his secretary. Draw your own conclusions. Jennifer made more notes. Tell me about your grandfather. This was harder. Good memories hurt worse than bad ones when you're living in hell. Harold Cross was the only person in my childhood who made sense. He built Cross Lumber from nothing. 3 mills across Oregon by the time I was born. He smelled like sawdust and peppermint candies, the old-fashioned kind in cellophane wrappers. When I was really young, maybe 5 or 6, he'd take me to the mills on Saturdays. Let me wear a tiny hard hat, taught me how wood grain works, how to tell good lumber from bad. I picked up the coffee again, needing something to hold. My father hated those trips. Said Harold was filling my head with blue-collar nonsense, that I should be learning about insurance and investments, not sawdust and sweat. They'd fight about it at Sunday dinners. Not yelling fights, but that quiet kind of warfare where every word is a knife and every silence is loaded. When did Harold die? October 15th, 1992. Heart attack at his desk at the main mill. I was 8. My father gave the eulogy at the funeral, talked about Harold's dedication to charity, his love of nature, how he donated his entire estate to environmental foundations. My father believed trees were more important than family, he said. Made it sound noble and selfish at the same time. I remembered that funeral, the way rain hit the tent over the grave, how my father's hand on my shoulder felt like a shackle, not comfort. We moved 2 weeks later, from a 4-bedroom house in Laurelhurst to a 2-bedroom apartment in Gresham. Father said Harold's charity donations left us with nothing but memories and debt. My mother never said anything at all. She just got quieter, started taking more pills, started dying in small increments until the big death finally came. Jennifer leaned forward. Dennis, what I'm about to tell you might be difficult to hear. Your grandfather didn't leave his money to charity. He created a trust in 1985 when you were 1 year old. Very specific conditions, ironclad legal structure. The money could only be accessed when you turned 50, or if you found yourself in genuine financial hardship, defined as 6 months without home or sustainable income. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the Persian rug. Brown liquid spread like blood across the expensive wool. I stared at the mess, my mind trying to process what she'd just said. He knew, I said finally. Harold knew I'd end up here, broken, desperate. Or, Jennifer said gently, he knew your father well enough to predict what might happen, and he wanted to make sure you had a safety net, even if it took 40 years to deploy. She handed me a tissue for the coffee spill, but I just held it, forgotten, as the full weight of 40 years of lies began to settle on my shoulders like all that steel that had crushed my spine. Jennifer had someone clean up the coffee while she pulled out document after document from the folder. Each page she turned felt like peeling back layers of lies I'd been fed since childhood. The trust started with $12 million in 1985, she explained, spreading financial statements across the conference table we'd moved to. Your grandfather chose First National Bank's private wealth division to manage it. 40 years of compound interest, smart investments, and one hell of a bull market in tech stocks turned it into $340 million. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice cracked like I was 15 again, watching them lower my mother's casket. Your grandfather's instructions were specific. No one could contact you about the trust until the conditions were met. He believed, and I'm quoting from his letter to the bank, that unearned wealth corrupts, but wealth that arrives when you've learned the value of $1 can save. She pulled out another envelope, cream-colored with my name written in Harold's careful handwriting. He also left this, to be opened only by you, only when you received the trust. I took the letter, but didn't open it yet. My hands were shaking too much. Does my father know about this? Jennifer's expression darkened. That's where things get complicated. Mitchell filed a lawsuit at 9 o'clock this morning, about 3 hours after you were served notice. He's contesting the trust. How did he know so fast? He's been having you watched. A private investigator has been tracking you for the past year, reporting on your condition. The moment you were served, Mitchell was notified. The rage that filled me was so hot it felt cold. He's been watching me eat garbage for a year. According to the court filing, he's claiming your grandfather suffered from paranoid delusions. He has medical records from 1983 showing Harold was hospitalized for 72 hours for psychiatric evaluation. He's arguing the trust was created during a period of mental incompetence. That's impossible. Harold was the sharpest man I ever knew. Mitchell has Dr. Lawrence Petrick ready to testify, the same psychiatrist who signed the original commitment papers in 1983. He's prepared to state that Harold showed signs of paranoid personality disorder, that he made unfounded accusations against family members, and that any legal documents created during that period should be considered invalid. I stood up, paced to the window. 42 floors below, Portland spread out like a map of every place I'd slept rough. Every doorway, every bridge, every forgotten corner where the invisible people go to disappear. What kind of accusations? Jennifer hesitated. Open your grandfather's letter. I tore the envelope carefully. Inside, Harold's precise handwriting covered 3 pages. I read it once, then again, then had to sit down before I fell down. Dear Dennis, I read aloud, my voice strange in the quiet office. If you're reading this, you've discovered what I've hidden for 40 years. By now, your father has probably told you I was crazy, that I gave everything to charity. The truth is, harder. In 1983, I caught your father stealing from the company. Not just money, though that was bad enough. He was selling our client list to competitors, sabotaging equipment to inflate repair contracts. But what broke my heart was discovering what he was doing to your mother. I found receipts in his desk for mercury compounds from a medical supply company. I hired a private investigator who photographed him putting drops in Ruth's coffee every morning. He was poisoning her slowly, making her appear unstable, depressed. Her father owned a restaurant chain worth millions. If she died, you would inherit it, and Mitchell would control it until you turned 18. I confronted him, threatened to call the police. He laughed and said no one would believe me. That night, he had me committed for psychiatric evaluation, claiming I was having paranoid delusions. He'd been setting it up for months, telling people I was acting strange, seeing conspiracies everywhere. Dr. Petrick was his golf buddy. The fix was in from the start. I couldn't prove it in court, but I could protect you. This trust ensures Mitchell never touches a cent. The bank has evidence I gathered. Receipts, photographs, even a recording of Mitchell discussing his plan with his brother Roy. I've instructed them to release it all if he ever challenges the trust. Don't let him fool you, son. He's been waiting 40 years for me to die, thinking the regular would kick in. He never knew about the trust because I created it through a shell company before transferring it to First National. Your mother knew something was wrong. She wrote in her diary about feeling worse after Mitchell brought her coffee. I have that diary. It's in a safety deposit box, along with the other evidence. Jennifer has the key. I'm sorry I couldn't save her. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to raise you properly. But I could make sure that when you needed it most, when Mitchell had taken everything else from you, you'd have the resources to fight back. The money is yours, Dennis, not because you're my grandson, but because you're Ruth's son, and she deserved better than what Mitchell did to her. We both know she didn't kill herself. She was murdered in small doses, 1 cup of coffee at a time. Use this money to become the man Mitchell never was, and when he comes for it, because he will, remember that I kept every receipt, recorded every conversation, documented every crime. The evidence has been waiting 40 years to see daylight. Harold Cross. I set the letter down with numb fingers. Jennifer pushed a tissue box across the table, and only then did I realize I was crying. He killed her, I said. My father killed my mother for money. The evidence supports that conclusion, Jennifer said carefully. But Dennis, you need to understand what you're facing. Mitchell has resources, connections. He spent 40 years building a reputation as a respectable businessman. He'll claim this letter is the delusion of a sick old man, that the evidence is fabricated. But you have proof? We have the safety deposit box, we have the recordings, we have the receipts. But Mitchell has had 40 years to prepare his counter-narrative. This is going to be a war. I thought about the past 2 years, about digging through trash, about sleeping on cardboard, about my father standing 10 feet away like I was contagious, while he'd known all along that millions waited in a bank with my name on them. Good, I said. I've been fighting to survive with nothing. Now, let's see how he fights when I have everything. Jennifer called in her team, 3 younger lawyers who looked like they'd graduated from Harvard last week, but moved like sharks who smelled blood. Within an hour, the conference room transformed into a war room. Documents covered every surface, laptops hummed with research, and someone had ordered Chinese food that sat untouched while we worked. Mitchell's filing claims undue influence and mental incapacity, said Thomas, the lead associate, scrolling through his tablet. He's asking for an emergency injunction to freeze the trust assets until a competency hearing can evaluate Harold's mental state at the time of the trust's creation. When's the hearing? I asked. Thursday, 3 days from now. Judge Patricia Kellerman presiding. Jennifer frowned. Kellerman went to law school with Mitchell's attorney, David Reeves. They're in the same country club. Of course they are, I muttered, then turned to Jennifer. I want to see everything, the recordings, the receipts, all of it. She nodded to Thomas, who pulled out a banker's box that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Reagan administration. Inside were cassette tapes, yellowed receipts, photographs, and a small leather diary with my mother's initials embossed on the cover. I picked up the diary first, recognized her handwriting immediately. She'd had beautiful penmanship, the kind they don't teach anymore. The entries started optimistic, talking about baby clothes and nursery colors. Then they grew darker. March 15th, 1983, I read. Mitchell brought me coffee in bed again. So thoughtful, but I felt dizzy after. Doctor says it's just anxiety. April 2nd, 1983, lost time again today, found myself in the garden with no memory of going outside. Mitchell says I've been sleepwalking. I don't remember ever sleepwalking before. May 10th, 1983. Harold came by while Mitchell was at work. He looked at me strange, asked if I was feeling all right. Wanted to take me to his doctor. Mitchell was furious when he found out. Thomas handed me an old cassette player. The recording is queued up. I pressed play, and my father's younger voice filled the room, cocky and cruel. The conversation with his brother Roy was worse than the letter described. They laughed about how stupid Ruth was, how she never suspected anything. They discussed increasing the mercury doses, debated whether it would show up in an autopsy. "The beauty is," Mitchell's voice said, "even if she dies, everyone already thinks she's unstable. Suicide would be tragic, but not unexpected. Poor Mitchell, they'll say, he tried so hard to help her." I had to stop the tape. The Chinese food smell was making me nauseous, or maybe it was the casual way my father had discussed murdering my mother while she was pregnant with me. "There's more," Jennifer said gently. "Receipts from Baxter Medical Supply, mercury compounds, ordered monthly for 2 years. Surveillance photos of Mitchell meeting with competitors, handing over client lists, bank records showing deposits that match exactly with Cross Lumber's lost contracts. Why didn't Harold go to the police? He tried. The moment he confronted Mitchell, your father struck first. Had him committed, discredited him. By the time Harold got out, Mitchell had already convinced everyone, including your mother, that Harold was paranoid and dangerous. The police wouldn't even look at the evidence." I stood up, walked to the window again. The sun was setting over Portland, painting the city gold. Somewhere out there, my spot under the Riverside Bridge was empty. Someone else would claim it tonight. I didn't need it anymore, but I'd never forget it. "What do you want to do, Dennis?" Jennifer asked. "I want to bury him, not physically, though that's tempting. I want everyone to know what he did. I want Gloria to know she married a murderer. I want his golf buddies to know they've been playing 18 holes with a killer. I want it all out there." "That's a dangerous strategy," Thomas warned. "If we go public with accusations we can't definitively prove in court, Mitchell could countersue for defamation. You could lose everything. I've already lost everything: my mother, my health, my home, my dignity. I've eaten out of dumpsters while my father played golf. I've slept in the rain while he knew millions were sitting in a bank. What else can he take from me?" Jennifer stood up, all 5 feet 4 inches of her radiating the kind of power that made courtrooms quiet. "Then we fight, but we fight smart. First, we get you cleaned up and ready for court. The judge needs to see you as Harold's worthy heir, not Mitchell's discarded son. Second, we depose Dr. Petrick immediately, before Mitchell can coach him further. Third, we request an expedited release of trust funds for legal expenses and living costs. And fourth? Fourth, we let Mitchell think he's winning. Let him get comfortable, overconfident. Then we play the recording in open court and watch his world collapse." She pulled out a credit card, handed it to me. "Firm account for expenses. There's a hotel 2 blocks away, the Sentinel. They're expecting you. Presidential suite because Harold's grandson doesn't sleep in standard rooms. Tomorrow morning, you meet with our image consultant. New clothes, haircut, everything. You're going to walk into that courtroom looking like the man who deserves $340 million. I took the card, felt its weight. What if we lose? Then you go back under your bridge. But Dennis, I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've seen every kind of family betrayal, every flavor of greed. Your grandfather didn't just leave you money. He left you a trap that Mitchell walked into the moment he filed that lawsuit. Harold knew his son better than Mitchell knew himself." She pulled out one more document. "This is a letter Harold wrote to the bank in 1990, 2 years before he died. He predicted, almost to the day, when Mitchell would challenge the trust. He knew his son would wait until you were desperate, then try to steal it. Every move Mitchell makes, Harold anticipated 30 years ago." I read the letter, saw my grandfather's chess game laid out in black and white. He'd even predicted Mitchell would use Dr. Petrick, would claim mental incompetence, would try to buy off judges. "My God," I whispered, "he planned everything." "Everything except one thing," Jennifer said. "He couldn't predict what kind of man you'd become. But looking at you now, seeing how you've survived what would have broken most people, I think Harold would be proud. You're about to prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't just served cold." Sometimes it's served by a grandson who learned what his grandfather always knew, that Mitchell Holbrook would destroy anyone for money, even the people who loved him most. I pocketed the credit card, headed for the door. Thursday morning, then. Thursday morning, we go to war. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. I stood in front of the courthouse in a suit that cost more than I'd made in 3 months at the warehouse. The transformation was complete. Haircut, shave, manicure, even new teeth to replace the ones I'd lost to malnutrition and street fights. But underneath the expensive wool, I was still the man who'd learned to sleep with one eye open under bridges. The courtroom was packed. Mitchell had made sure of that, calling in favors from reporters, business associates, anyone who might witness his victory over his delusional father's estate. He sat at the plaintiff's table looking every inch the wronged son in his charcoal suit and silver tie. Gloria perched behind him, her face a mask of supportive wife concern that would have been convincing if I hadn't seen her checking her phone every 30 seconds. Judge Patricia Kellerman entered, and everyone rose. She was 60-something with steel-gray hair and the kind of face that had never smiled at a defendant. Jennifer had done her homework. Kellerman owed her appointment to a state senator who golfed with Mitchell every Sunday. "We're here to determine the validity of the Harold Cross Trust," Judge Kellerman began, already sounding bored. "Mr. Reeves, you may present your case." David Reeves stood up, all 6 feet of manufactured sympathy. "Your Honor, this is a tragedy of mental illness and family destruction. Harold Cross, in his final years, developed severe paranoid delusions that tore his family apart. We'll prove he was mentally incompetent when he created this trust, and that his grandson Dennis has been wrongfully denied his inheritance while his father, Mitchell Holbrook, has been painted as a villain by a sick man's fantasies." Dr. Lawrence Petrick took the stand first, 78 years old now, with hands that shook as he read from his old notes. Mr. Cross exhibited classic paranoid delusions. He believed his son was poisoning his daughter-in-law. He made wild accusations about business theft without any proof. I had no choice but to recommend psychiatric hold for evaluation. "Did you conduct the evaluation yourself?" Reeves asked. "I did." Mr. Cross was combative, insisted on conspiracy theories, showed no insight into his condition. Jennifer stood for cross-examination. "Dr. Petrick, how many times did you golf with Mitchell Holbrook in 1983? "I don't recall." Jennifer produced a ledger. "According to Riverside Country Club records, 47 times. Were you friends?" "We were acquaintances." "Acquaintances who golfed together twice a week. Tell me, doctor, did Mitchell ever pay your country club fees?" "That's not relevant." "Judge, have receipts showing Mitchell paid Dr. Petrick's country club fees for 3 years, totaling $36,000. Kellerman frowned, but allowed it. Petrick's face reddened. Mitchell took the stand next, the picture of wounded dignity. He spoke about his father's descent into madness, how Harold had accused him of terrible things, how it had destroyed their family. "My father was brilliant once," Mitchell said, actually producing a tear. "But mental illness took him. This trust was his final act of delusion, punishing me for imaginary crimes while leaving hundreds of millions to a grandson he barely knew." Jennifer approached the witness stand. "Mr. Holbrook, do you recognize this voice?" She played the recording. The courtroom went silent as Mitchell's younger voice filled the space, talking about mercury doses, about Ruth's impending death, about stealing from Cross Lumber. The color drained from Mitchell's face so fast I thought he might faint. "That's taken out of context," he stammered. "What context makes discussing mercury poisoning acceptable?" Jennifer asked. "It was a joke. Roy and I had dark humor." "A joke?" Jennifer produced receipts. "Then why did you purchase mercury compounds from Baxter Medical Supply for 2 years?" "I had a legitimate need." "For mercury? In what capacity does an insurance adjuster need mercury?" Mitchell's lawyer objected, but Kellerman overruled him, her friendly demeanor toward Mitchell evaporating. Jennifer wasn't done. She called Roy Holbrook to the stand. Mitchell's brother, now 73 and fighting pancreatic cancer, looked like death warmed over. "Mr. Holbrook," Jennifer said, "you have terminal cancer, correct? 6 months, they tell me. And you've asked to make a statement." Roy looked at Mitchell, and 40 years of guilt poured out. "It wasn't a joke. We did it. Mitchell poisoned Ruth. I helped plan it. I've been carrying this for 40 years, and I won't die with it on my conscience. Harold knew. He tried to stop us. We destroyed him for it." The courtroom erupted. Gloria fled, her heels clicking rapid staccato on the marble floor. Mitchell's lawyer demanded a recess. Kellerman denied it. But Jennifer saved the best for last. She called me to the stand and handed me my mother's diary. "Would you read the final entry, dated 2 days before her death?" I found the page, my mother's last words. "I know now what Mitchell has done. Harold tried to warn me, but I was too sick to understand. The coffee, every morning, getting worse. I can barely write this. If something happens to me, please make sure Dennis knows I loved him, that I didn't want to leave him. And Dad, if you're reading this after I'm gone, protect my boy. Mitchell will come for him too, eventually. He'll destroy anyone for money, even his own son." I looked up from the diary, straight at Mitchell. "You killed her. She knew it. Harold knew it. And now everyone knows it." Judge Kellerman's voice was ice. "Mr. Reeves, does your client wish to withdraw his challenge to the trust?" Reeves whispered urgently to Mitchell, who sat frozen, staring at me with eyes that held 40 years of carefully hidden truth finally exposed. "Your Honor," Reeves said, "we withdraw our challenge." "That's not all," Kellerman said. "I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney for Criminal Investigation. Mr. Mitchell Holbrook, you are not to leave the state pending investigation. This court finds the Harold Cross Trust valid and binding. The full amount is awarded to Dennis Holbrook immediately." She brought down her gavel with enough force to make everyone jump. "Mr. Dennis Holbrook, this court apologizes for what you've endured. Your grandfather was not delusional. He was a man trying to protect his family from a monster." Mitchell stood up, shaking. He looked at me, opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. What was there to say? "Sorry I killed your mother? Sorry I let you eat garbage while millions waited in a bank?" Federal marshals entered the courtroom. Mitchell Holbrook was arrested on charges of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The man, who'd stood 10 feet from his homeless son like poverty was contagious, was led away in handcuffs. His reputation destroyed, his crimes exposed, his father's 40-year trap finally sprung. The news cycle went insane. "Homeless man inherits $340 million while father charged with murder" became the headline that launched 1,000 think pieces about greed, family, and justice. But I wasn't reading any of them. I was standing in the ruins of Cross Lumber's original mill, the one Harold had built with his own hands in 1954. I'd bought it back from the development company that planned to turn it into condos, paid cash, which felt surreal to say. The main building was salvageable, the bones still good despite 40 years of neglect. Just like me, I supposed. Marcus Williams, the homeless veteran I'd shared the bridge with for 6 months, stood beside me in his new position as operations manager. "You really going to rebuild all this?" "Every beam, every wall, every saw, but different this time. Better." Within 3 months, Cross Lumber was operational again. I hired 100 people, focusing on those society had written off. Former addicts, ex-convicts, homeless individuals ready to work. The lady who'd run the soup kitchen on Burnside, Margaret Chen, became our HR director. Jerome, the postal worker who delivered my certified letter and called me that Uber, ran our shipping department. The first time I visited Mitchell in federal prison, he looked smaller, grayer, like orange jumpsuit had drained whatever made him formidable. We sat across from each other at a metal table that reminded me of the one I'd eaten at in the shelter. "Why?" I asked. Simple question, 40 years in the making. Mitchell shrugged. the gesture almost casual. Your grandfather built an empire from nothing, handed it down like it was his birthright to give. I worked my whole life and had nothing to show for it. Insurance adjusting, watching other people's tragedies, filing papers about their losses. Your mother's family had money, real money. It should have been mine. So you killed her. I made a choice, the same choice anyone would make if they were honest about it. That's where you're wrong, I said, standing up. Most people don't poison their wives. Most fathers don't watch their sons starve while sitting on stolen millions. You're not normal, Mitchell. You're broken in a way that money could never fix. Are you going to visit again? He actually sounded hopeful. Once a month, not out of love, but because Harold would want me to. He believed in family, even when family disappointed him. But understand this, I'm not here for you. I'm here to remind myself what I'm not. Mitchell got 12 years for fraud and conspiracy. The murder charge was harder to prove after 40 years, but the mercury poisoning evidence was enough for conspiracy to commit. Gloria divorced him before the trial ended, took her settlement, and disappeared to Florida. She sent me a letter once, apologizing for not seeing what Mitchell was. I didn't reply. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Dr. Petrick lost his medical license and died 6 months later in a nursing home, alone and disgraced. Roy lasted 8 months, just long enough to testify in detail about their plan. Before he died, he asked for my forgiveness. I told him forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It belonged to my mother, and she was past giving anything to anyone. The trust money did what Harold intended, not just for me, but for everyone Mitchell had indirectly hurt through his cruelty. I established Ruth's Haven, transitional housing built where the Riverside Bridge camp used to be. 300 units with counseling services, job training, and dignity restored one person at a time. I kept Harold's letter in my wallet next to my mother's picture. Sometimes I'd read it while walking through the mill, hearing the saws sing again, watching people work who'd been told they were worthless. Harold had known that money without purpose was just paper, but money with mission could rebuild worlds. Jennifer Brennan became a close friend, the only person who knew the whole story, and could discuss it without flinching. "Your grandfather played a 40-year chess game," she said once over coffee, "but you're the one who had to survive long enough to claim victory." "He knew I would," I replied. "Somehow, he knew Mitchell would push me to the breaking point, and that I'd survive it. The trust conditions weren't random. 6 months homeless meant I'd know what bottom looked like, what real hunger felt like, what it meant to be invisible. Harold wanted me to earn this money through suffering, because he knew that's the only way I'd use it right." Standing in the mill office now, I look at Harold's portrait, the one I'd restored, and hung where everyone could see it. Below it, a plaque with his favorite saying, "Money doesn't build character, it reveals it." Mitchell's character had been revealed in mercury and greed. Mine had been revealed in dumpsters and determination. And Harold's? His had been revealed in patience, in planning, in loving a grandson enough to save him from 30 years in the future. The money didn't save me, though. The truth did. The truth about my mother's death, about my father's nature, about my grandfather's love. $340 million was just the tool that let me rebuild what Mitchell had destroyed. My name is Dennis Holbrook. I was homeless for 2 years, 3 months and 12 days. Now I run a lumber empire that employs 500 people and operates 3 mills. I live in a modest apartment above the original mill office where Harold used to work. I don't need a mansion. I've slept under stars and bridges. I know what real wealth looks like. It looks like Jerome getting promoted to logistics director. It looks like Margaret's son getting a scholarship to Oregon State. It looks like the lady who used to beg outside the courthouse now running our accounts receivable department. It looks like second chances handed out like Harold used to hand out silver dollars, freely and with faith that people are better than their worst moments. The reporters always ask if I forgive Mitchell. I tell them forgiveness isn't the point. The point is that Harold Cross loved his family enough to protect us from ourselves, even if it took 40 years to do it. He knew that sometimes justice needs compound interest to mature properly, and that the best inheritance isn't money but the truth that sets you free. Every morning, I walk through the mill before anyone else arrives. I smell sawdust and possibility. I think about my mother, who never got justice while she lived. I think about Harold, who orchestrated justice from beyond the grave. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think about Mitchell in his cell, finally understanding that all the money in the world can't buy you a soul if you've already sold it for mercury and lies. That's my story. A grandfather's patience, a father's greed, and a grandson who learned that rock bottom isn't where you end, but where you learn to build foundations. $340 million didn't make me rich. Learning what really matters did. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that justice sometimes takes time but always finds a way. Drop a comment below about your thoughts on family, justice, and second chances. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that remind us that sometimes the longest cons are played by those who love us most, protecting us from dangers we don't even know exist.